Okay, Gino Yockler here. Going to go ahead and run some tests. I'm here in a nice customer's home, city of Cape Coral. Let's go ahead and run the hardness test here first. And they have a no salt water conditioner and a reverse osmosis system. So we'll test it after treatment, and then we're going to test it prior. So what we do is we add a hardness tablet, and it is one little pill that we add, and then we add 5 drops of our number 5 reagent, and if it turns blue, we know that the water is soft. Of course, if it turns red, then we know it's some degree of hard. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it does have some hardness in it, which is to be expected. Normal city tap water does. And then the no salt water conditioning system converts the minerals from bicarbonates to carbonates. So in this test, you won't see any difference, but if you look at the scale, typically it's a lot easier to clean the hardness minerals after they've been converted to the carbonates. So every drop I add of the number 7 reagent equals a grain of hardness, and we keep adding it till this turns blue. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go with that. 5, 6. Okay, so let's look like another 7. All right, so there's 7 grains of hardness here, and according to the reports that I saw, they should be between 3 and 4 coming from the city. Of course, when it travels through all the plumbing in the home or in the city water supply lines, typically if there's any residual hardness from before, it'll pick it up as it goes along the way. Of course, there's a lot of other variables, but it is 7 grains of hardness here. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and check the chlorine levels and the pH. And of course, it is running through a filter on the outside. I don't expect there to be any in this sample. Alrighty. So we add 5 drops of OTO. Alrighty, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if there's chlorine present, it'll turn a shade of yellow. And then we're going to add 5 drops of the pH solution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And then we'll see what we have for those 2 readings. Okay, so it looks like there's no chlorine in the water, and the pH is running about 7.2, so that's about perfect. That's what we'd like to see for pH and chlorine levels after a water filtration system. So now let's do a TDS test, which is total dissolved solids. So anything dissolved into your water, that could be sodium, it could be chemicals like pesticides, it could be a lot of various things. And our recommendation is for that to be as low as possible. Of course, it depends on what that dissolved solid is. If it's beneficial minerals, of course, that's not a concern. But the chemicals that you really don't want, and there's a lot of them, those, of course, we don't want any, right? So we're going to send all this off to a laboratory after we're done with these tests. But right now, the reading I'm getting from the tap is 377. All right, I don't know if you can see that or not, but 377 is the reading, which for my taste would be quite high, okay? So let's test the water from the reverse osmosis system. And I'll rinse it here a little bit. So it's going from 377 all the way down to 38, okay? So that is a 90% reduction in dissolved solids. Of course, one thing I didn't do is check to see if this is the one with minerals added, or if it's just standard S5 RO system. Looks like it's just a standard S5. Yeah, so we also have the ability to add the minerals to the water. So if you choose to do that, of course, it'll bring the pH up a little more. Otherwise, the pH will stay about the same as city tap water, or maybe a little bit less. But anyway, everything's testing out good here. I see no chlorine. The pH is fine. The dissolved solids reading is really good. So this customer is in great shape. Okay, so I'm going to send a sample off to TapScore. It's an online water testing. I paid for this so that we can see what's going on with our water supply. So we want to go ahead and fill these things according to the directions. Of course, I took the liberty of reading them before I came out here. One of these we're going to fill up to the very tippy top, and the other one we're just going to fill up to the neck. So go ahead and run that here now. Actually, we're going to do it with the reverse osmosis water. Best case scenario. Okay, so that's the one sample. And that will go off to the testing laboratory. And then we're going to send this one as well. It says to put a little bubble on top and cap it off. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so those are going to the laboratory. Send those off to TapScore. And we'll get our results and find out if Florida Water Analysis is a good water treatment company that removes things from the water, or if it's all just a bunch of hogwash, right? And of course, I know the answer to that, and after what you've seen here today, I'm sure you know too. But anyway, we'll see what the results say, what it's removed, and what's still in the water. And we're going to go outside now. Okay. Okay, so we're on the outside here. We're going to run some water on the spigot, and we're going to test it, see what the TDS is and the chlorine and all that. So let's go ahead and run some water here from the city of Cape Coral, straight out of their tap before it goes into the water system. All right, let's see what we have. All right, so it looks like it's 342. So there's a little bit of addition there. Could be from the plumbing. Could be that the filter from the whole house needs to be replaced or backflush. But it's very similar, 343, 377. Also, the water, I notice, is much cooler out here, so temperature can affect the TDS meter as well. But still over 300. Okay. Let's go ahead and run a pH and chlorine test. You can tell there's going to be chlorine in there. You can smell it. Okay, so let's get the two different things. We've got the pH solution, phenol red, and then the OTO. Alrighty, so 5 drops in each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see there's definitely chlorine in the tap water. Of course, there has to be by law. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the pH sample. Let's take a look and see where we're at. Okay, so your pH is actually a little bit higher. So it's stabilized with the equipment inside, but it's actually looks like over 8. And then the chlorine that I'm getting here, I don't know what you're seeing, but I'm seeing about 2. Right, so you got about 2 on the chlorine and over 8 for pH. So you're going to get calcification with 8 grains hard is what we saw inside. Let's see and confirm that it's 8 on the outside as well. So we'll go ahead and grab another sample for the hardness test. Rinse our tube. Alrighty, let's check it out. Use this window ledge here. Very nice customers allowing us to use their home. Alright, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll grab our little pill. Add one of those to the sample. Okay, and we'll dissolve that guy. And if it turns pink or red, which it did, we know it is hard. Of course, that's coming straight from the city. And let's take a look by adding the hardness number 7. How many grains of hardness we've got. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a little harder before that no salt water conditioner. I got 8 grains of hardness. Definitely about twice as much as their claim of only 4, but that could be because of the plumbing. Of course, you have different ways of testing water as a city, right? You can test at point of use, like we're doing here, which they hardly ever do, or you can test it directly out of the plant. And as you can see, the numbers are far different, especially when you consider they blend the water. It's partially reverse osmosis, but it's also partially treated water that hasn't been purified. So when you have that, you're going to have much higher numbers. So between the two of them, it's coming out about 8 grains of hardness right here at the tap, and over 340 for the total dissolved solids. And then, of course, the pH and the chlorine are pretty high. I mean, for consumption. Obviously, you want to make sure you have chlorine in the water. It kills bacteria. But before it goes into your home, it's a really good idea to filter chlorine out. And chlorine can be destructive to your plumbing, your faucets, your fixtures. And, of course, when you absorb it through your skin, it can cause dry skin. And, of course, some people notice that they get irritation, their eyes water. Everybody's different. Sensitivity levels, long-term exposure, those are also considerations. You have to look at that. So if anybody tells me that this water, the City of Cape Coral's tap water, is perfect and it needs no treatment, I professionally disagree, and you've seen the evidence. Of course, this is just the normal testing that we do, and I have a few more tests I could do, but this gets the main stuff. But what we're going to do now is we're going to send these tests off to a laboratory, and they're going to do much more testing, and we'll have a real good idea of how that water looks after the purifier and before coming from the City of Cape Coral. Okay, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a little bit after we get our results. Okay, so we've got one more thing we need to do before we leave and head back to Winter Haven. We're going to go ahead and get our sample for the city water so that we can send it off to the tap score. Let them do their magic. A lot of information in here, but bottom line is we got to get 2 samples. Of course, one sample needs to be filled up to the neck, and the other sample needs to be all the way to the top with a little bit of a bubble on top so that it keeps everything in there. Alrighty, so there's sample 1, city water. And this is the one that needs to have the bubble on top. So make sure we got plenty of water in there and no chlorine escapes. Okay, I got a little bubble on top. Cap that off. Go ahead and send this off to Tap Score Water Testing, and we'll see what the results are. So thanks for tuning in. Okay, Gino Yockler here again, Florida Water Analysis. I'm going to go through the test results that we got back from the City of Cape Coral. We ran those tests through Simple Lab, and those folks sent these results back. It's been a little bit of time, but there's been a resurgence of negative news, so I wanted to make sure the air was clear on what it is we do and what we can do. So without further delay, I'm going to run through the before and afters from the City of Cape Coral's tap water prior to entering a consumer's home. So the first number will be the city tap water, and the second numbers will be the reverse osmosis system. Total dissolved solids, parts per million, 437, and after, 55. Hardness, parts per million, 109.35, after, 2.68. Total trihalomethanes, or THMS, and this is parts per billion, 34.04. After the reverse osmosis system, 0. And the next page here. All right, we have barium. And before it was 0.0043, after none was detected. Boron, 0.232, after 0.219. Calcium, 13.3 parts per million, and after 0.3. Chloride, 170 parts per million, after 24.3. Next page. The rest of these that I'm not mentioning, and there was actually over 100 things that they tested for, they were not detected at all in both samples, so no point in bringing those up. So copper parts per million before 0.0397 and after none detected. Fluoride parts per million 0.7 after none detected. Iron parts per million 0.203 after none detected. Magnesium parts per million 17.8 after 0.44. Manganese parts per million 0.0023 after none detected. Nitrates parts per million 0.11 after none detected. Potassium before parts per million 4.38 after none detected. Sodium 94.98 parts per million and after 15.1. Strontium parts per million 2.11 after 0.051. Sulfate 35.5 parts per million and after 2. Next page. Actually, we didn't really get any results after that. The rest of these items were none detected. So the choice is yours, really. If you take a look at the city of Cape Coral, do they meet the minimum standards? Well, absolutely. All right, the maximum allowable total dissolved solids is 500, and they're at 437. Which, by the way, I've been around the state of Florida. That's higher than the average. If you look at the EWG, and this isn't us, we're just reporting what we see here. You've got 5 exceeded EWG health guidelines, a total of 10 contaminants from the city of Cape Coral, of which they say there's chromium hexavalent, and in their words, EWG's health guideline is 4.3 times higher than what they say is a good number. Halioacetic acids, they're saying it's 40 times the EWG's health guideline, 49 times for radium, combined 226 and 228. And strontium, they're saying it's twice as high as what they would like to see. And of course, total trihalomethanes, which is the chlorination byproducts, is 180 times the EWG's health guidelines. And there was some other things detected as well. And then they show you reverse osmosis, hands down, is far better because it removes all those things that we just mentioned and more. Okay, so bottom line is we recommend reverse osmosis for everybody. And if you're concerned about low pH, we can also add minerals back into your water after it's been purified. So the choice is yours. You make the call.